Mariah Foley, and I'm originally from Denver, Colorado, and I'm currently living on DU's campus. My involvement in the Bridge Garden started last fall with a few work days at the end of the season, and currently I'm prepping for this next growing season, and I'm going to be working on a plot, kind of my own, and kind of for the organization on campus called Students for Sustainable Food. I grew up with a garden, always in my backyard. My family did some small-scale gardening, so that was always something I've grown up with. And then during high school, I volunteered a bit with a farm in Denver called Farms, so that got me really interested in the idea of urban gardening and community gardening. I've worked a bit with on harvest days for Farms with their community garden, and then just my family garden in my backyard, and we always share our produce. If we have tons of zucchinis every year, we always share those with our neighbors and kind of build community that way. I really like the idea of being so close and so in touch with the food system and with what I'm eating, but it also I've met a lot of people through the Bridge Garden that are community members surrounding DU, not necessarily students. So that's been really cool to kind of reach out and not necessarily be in the college bubble, but be able to meet the community and work with them on work days, and just kind of, you bond with people when you're digging. With the Bridge Garden on campus, I'm still developing a lot of relationships with the people because I'm fairly new to the gardens, but definitely people that I have worked on work days with, my friend Emma. When we were just becoming friends in the fall, we did a work day together, and that definitely helped us grow closer and get to know each other better, just because it was an activity that we were doing, and also I know a whole bunch more people, a bunch of law students are involved with the Bridge Garden, so I made connections with them and been able to email them and reach out for various projects that the Club Students for Sustainable Food is doing. So it's definitely a lot of connections, and I really hope that those can continue to grow stronger. It's definitely a way to get involved with the community, and with students at DU, but also there's so many cool, I don't really know them that well, but I think they're cool, and I want to, when you see someone, there's this one woman who works in the garden who's an amazing gardener, and I just want to know all her secrets and get to know her and really learn from her, and so that's kind of exciting. Tomatoes are one of my favorite foods, and they kind of suck in the winter, and so I wait all winter for really good fresh tomatoes. I remember as a kid eating tomatoes like apples, just pulling it off the vine. Yeah. So I just love tomatoes, and so that's kind of has enough nostalgia and delicious food. This next season, I am kind of working the plot for Students for Sustainable Food, which is a student group on campus. And we hopefully will be using a lot of the food that's harvested in the fall for various club events and in our cooking, and really to make local food available on campus. So that will be exciting. But as far as during the summer, there's going to be just a few members of SFF on in Denver, so we'll be eating the food. I became a vegetarian when I was in 5th grade, and my parents were we don't really want to cook 2 different dinners for you, so you're going to have to start cooking. And it's definitely something, it's really hard for me to sit in the dining hall and not have that control over my food as far as how it's cooked and how it's seasoned and what I want to eat. So I'm very excited to be able to cook more.
Do you feel there's some?
I think it's really cool to just be connected, because so much of our current food system allows for such disconnect over not knowing where your food came from, who farmed it, how many hands have touched it, who's getting paid what for what. So there's a lot of social justice and environmental issues in the food system that sprout from disconnect. And I think it's really cool to take a step back and like have our hands in the ground and like be like have a real tangible connection to your food. And I think like that goes into cooking and like that transformation of something from like such a raw state to something that like nourishes you, I think it can be really powerful. The Bridge Garden creates like not only a connection to like our food system and to our food, and like, I mean, I really like to eat, so like that's an obvious benefit is like getting good, delicious food. But like that connection to the earth, but also the connection to the community around you, because it's so easy to just stay on campus and stay like with your group of friends and like go to class and maybe do another club. But I think it's kind of rare to have an opportunity to get involved with the greater community area and get involved with like adults in the community and like create actual bonds with them and like bonds with faculty members, because a bunch of faculty members also have plots in the garden. So I think there's just a lot of value in being part of a community, and the Bridge Garden provides a very tangible way to get involved. When the Bridge Garden started, it was like, I believe it's the third season, and it was a student initiative on campus, but then they reached out to Denver Urban Gardens and posted like signs and gave like flyers out to like the people in the neighborhood. So it's really been like a joint effort between like DU students and Denver Urban Gardens, and Doug provides like compost stuff and like they pay for the water and like other various things, which really allows the gardens to function. So it's a cool partnership with not only the community, but also like this greater organization.
Yeah, what do you know about any of the other gardens other than the Bridge Garden?
I know there's a farm called Delaney Farms, and it's like the biggest garden associated with Denver Urban Gardens. And I know it's like they produce a lot of food, and a lot of it goes to food banks, but they also have a CSA, which is community supported agriculture, and so you pay for a share in this garden up front at the beginning of the season, and then each week through the growing season, you get like a box of fresh produce. I am one of the founding members of Students for Sustainable Food, which just started this last winter, and then I also run on the club cross country team.
My name is Lily Siegel Gardner Coleman, and I've been involved with the garden since it was built, which I think is about 5 years. And my involvement with the garden has been originally just helping build the garden. We built the irrigation trenches and put the water lines in and all of that, brought in the soil, put out the pathways and all of that. And last year I took on a leadership role as one of the membership coordinator and the treasurer, which I'm still today. From what I know about the history, there was a bachelor's candidate in the International Studies program, Ben Waldman, who really wanted to see a community garden and sort of more just urban garden happening in the area and wanted DU to be part of it. And he somehow figured out, I don't know exactly, that DU owned this piece of property that was just an empty lot, a house that had been bulldozed, and facilities to use the garage for storage, which they still do, and went through the processes, I think, through the Sustainability Council and through the university administration to get approval to use it as a community garden. And then he applied for a grant through, I don't know exactly what the name of the office is, but it's like the Center for Community Engagement and Service Learning or something like that. I know that's the wrong name, but something to that effect. And I believe he got a grant for $6,000, maybe $10,000 to help with seed funding. And then he partnered with Denver Urban Gardens, which is a nonprofit here in Denver that basically manages over 100 community gardens throughout the city. And he partnered with them and they helped do the landscape design and figured all of that out, provided compost And then we had community meetings with students who were interested, people who work at DU, and then community members who sort of came in. So that's kind of the way it sort of bubbled up. Until about 6 months ago, there was a bridge in the front, an old rickety bridge that I don't know where it came from, wooden bridge, that was found, and the idea was sort of to be a bridge between DU and the community to help improve relationships between the local community and DU. And so the actual physical wooden bridge was kind of an imagery of that, but after wear and tear and rain and the elements, the wood was really rotting and falling apart. And so we took it apart recently just so that we could have more space for things to grow. And now you can see up in the front there's strawberries everywhere where there was a bridge over it. Well, the first year we really tried to pair each plot. There was a community member and a student who shared the plot together, which we were hoping would work out really great. It did. Some of the obstacles we came across were that a lot of the students who were really interested and excited about it were not here for the summer. And because our growing season is basically when you guys are all done with school, except for harvesting and planting, there wasn't a lot of a way to get them engaged. So we've had a lot more graduate students who kind of stick around more during the summer, and PhD student involvement than undergraduate involvement, but we've had great involvement through the DU Garden Club as well. I mean, I think it's just we've had 2 volunteer groups from the law school that came earlier this season to help us kind of prepare things. And I know they were really excited because they spend a lot of time in the law library, and they were just really excited not to be studying and helping out in the community and getting their hands dirty. I know another student who actually just finished her bachelor's degree but was involved in the garden last year, who hadn't been over this season but was really excited to see what changes we've made and how things have progressed. So I think people kind of have like an ownership, like it's part of their community. You know, it's sort of relaxing and therapeutic to, you know, you pull up weeds and you instantly feel like you've accomplished something, whereas maybe you'll sit in the library for 2 days working on a 20-page paper and feel like you're hitting your head up against the wall or something. So it's a good relaxation, definitely. We generally try to have at least one sort of harvest potluck in the garden every year, which is just a fun way. You know, we interact with the other people in the garden while we're here, and also, you know, sometimes form friendships. Like Megan and I didn't know each other before the garden. You know, now we'll sometimes go grab a drink and we're friendly, and now we're teaching this gardening series for the wellness program together. Another friend that I sort of peripherally knew was more friends with her boyfriend, got involved in the garden, and now I've become really good friends with her through that process. And they're no longer together, but, you know, we remain friends. And then, you know, other community people who, you know, sometimes we'll grab coffee and get together outside of the garden. One of our PhD students who's not coming back to the garden but has been involved for several years, he is graduating, finishing up, and so he's moving for a job, but I just ran into him on campus while I was picking up food and Nagel, and he was in the midst of defending his dissertation and told me about his new job. So it was kind of neat to, you know, connect outside of the garden and hear that things are going well, and he's gotten a great job at Intel. So, I mean, it's great to be outside. As you can see, we're having a, you know, sort of lunch break activity here for faculty and staff, and people want to come because it's a nice way to get away from your desk. It's really rewarding to be able to grow your own food and naturally, and doesn't have all the chemicals in it. You know where it's coming from, and it tastes better. It's a good way to come together with your friends and your community. I think people have really come in at all different experience levels. We've had people who've gardened who are, you know, older retired people who've gardened for 40 years and, you know, have a very exact science about the way they want to do things. And then we have people who've maybe gardened at home with their families a little bit growing up, but weren't really in charge of anything themselves. And I think people really feel empowered because they're learning how to grow their own food and be a little more dependent on themselves rather than going to the grocery store. So it's definitely developed people's skill level. A lot of the food goes to people's homes. A lot of people take food to their coworkers and friends and family if they have extra food. We've also donated food to different, you know, food banks and refugee community centers throughout the years. some people have gotten involved in canning and preserving their food so they can eat it all throughout the year because our growing season is so short. For one thing, it helps the pocketbook for sure, which is great. My husband and I both have recently finished graduate school, which is very expensive, and it's nice to be able to grow our own food and reduce our grocery bills. And it's also nice to grow food that we know is organic. We know everything that's gone into it, and there's also just that sense of accomplishment of like, I made this, and how much more fun is it to cook when you're cooking with ingredients that you've helped create. We have 11 full plots, and on average they're about 10 feet by 13 feet. And then we have 2 communal plots, which are smaller, which are now part of the wellness plot. And I've never tried to calculate the poundage, but my husband and I have usually shared our plot. That's a 10 by 13 plot with at least 2 other people, and there's always been more food than we could eat.
My name's Daniel Powell. I'm about to be a senior here at DU, and I got involved with the garden freshman year, a couple years out after it started with this guy Ben, who got this going. And so I've been working with Megan Kelly and the other leaders of the garden for the last few years. This year I do not have a plot because I'm headed back to Thailand, but I currently live off campus, just a couple blocks away. It ties you into your local food, what they call it, you have your water reservoir type thing. And this is kind of like a food reservoir, just getting into your local network is really cool. And you meet a lot of people you wouldn't run into normally while in the garden, because everybody is connected to food. So just being involved in the garden gets you tied to that and gets you kind of put in a community that you normally wouldn't be in because they're not hip enough, or they're not cool enough, or they're 58 and are retired and just live right next to campus and want to help you out, and they just know so much and just want to grow some vegetables. I would say I've met people, and we go and do stuff, but it's mostly when I think of friends as somebody you go to Fridays with, it's kind of very friendly acquaintances. You run into them once or twice a day, and you say hello when you're watering and talk about food, and then you go your separate ways. But there's also barbecues and stuff like that, so it's a good community network to get pulled into. One of the best parts of being a student is that you're really young, and you can really still kind of become anyone you want to be. And I think it's very important for our generation especially to get reconnected with how to grow food, where it comes from, and start to ask those really important questions that have just kind of got pushed to the side in the Nixon administration and the Reagan administration, just cheaper, faster, and just that kind of stuff. I think we're kind of moving beyond that into kind of a sustainable step. And when you talked about the Depression, the reason a lot of people got by is because they had victory gardens and stuff like that with World War II and all that kind of stuff. They could grow a very hefty percentage of their food right in their front yard. And right now we're growing grass. So it's just what are we doing? We have so much land, and the best land is in urban areas. That's why they're there. That's why people move there, is because the really good farmland was there, so you could have a surplus and then move to the city. So anyways, just getting reconnected to this entire framework of thinking is really cool. And I think a garden is a great place to start. And really, everybody's oh, I don't have a green thumb, it's going to be so hard. But really, I have never had a problem with anything. If you do your research and you're going to have some things that die, but overall, you're going to be getting it's not as hard as people make it out to be if you just water it and have good soil and talk to the right people. So I think it's really cool that students can start to get reconnected with their where their sustenance, where their life comes from in the soil. And community garden ties into that. You also meet community members. So a lot of times as students, you're just always talking to students and teachers, but there's real people outside the little bubble between high and university as well. In 2010, they dropped couple hundred flyers just in the neighborhood, door to door, canvassing, hey, we're trying to get this garden started. It was a vacant lot, pretty much, that the school owned, so they convinced them to just bulldoze it, or I don't even know if it was bulldozed, but anyways, just have a garden here. So it was he and a few other students. I believe the girl's name was Erin, but I could be wrong. And was that right? Okay, so her name is Erin, and they got this started in I think 2006, 2007 when they were fresh on campus, and that's pretty much how it got going. And from year to year, different people step up to lead it, and different people cycle through and get involved. But there's been some community members who live right next to campus that have been involved since the get-go. But if anything, it's like a little footbridge, like a little kind of shaky one, and everybody's kind of cautious about getting across, but every now and then you'll go out and meet in the middle. So I mean, it's a limited bridge to the community, but it's still present. Like you can still, I've met probably on the order of like 10 to 20 people in the community instead of like 1,000 to 10,000, and there's what, 4,000 undergrads, 5,000. So it's a limited bridge, but it exists. It's not very big commitment because unless you're here during the summer, you're not going to be able to have a full plot by yourself. So we hook you up, or yeah, the leaders will pair you with somebody, and so you'll just tag team like watering time. So it's like once or twice a week, maybe, kind of as you can, because the community members are going to be doing it anyway. So it's just they come in, you'll meet them, you'll talk to them, maybe go to dinner, get to know them. It'll be awesome, but it's a great way to get started, and nothing's as much as a commitment as anybody wants to think it is. It's not that bad. Just nature. Like, it's just people getting outside. Like, we have all these problems, all these people worried about micro nanoparticles of toxicity. And, like, if they went outside, if they were growing their own food, like, I think a lot of our problems would start to get fixed really quick. Like, we did a research project and went to different schools around like the southwestern United States, when we were down in Albuquerque, and they were just talking about, they have a similar plot to this. It's a little smaller, a little less nice, a little more condensed, because their administration gave them like 3 rows, and they're just like guerrilla gardening, and they have classes there, and they go through, and just like the people, like the first day, everybody's just on their phones, like. But as their semester progressed, like they facilitated like meaningful friendships with people they would have just never known, because it just brings so many people together. So you start like on your computer and like on your little smartphone, and by the end you're like working in the garden. You've learned a good amount of substance, of practical skill, which is something that academia really cuts off, and we're very like distant. Like that was one of the coolest things with my study abroad program, is like actual learning. Like I can do a lot of paperwork, but just real learning and real skills and a real substantial education is outside of the classroom in a lot of cases. And I think that the garden can tie you into just real skills, hard work sounds bad, but it's very like, we're chemically predestined to do hard work. Endorphins make us feel good. And the only way to do that is to work outside and get a little sweat. So there's a very well-rounded, sustainable, encompassing idea encompassed in 12 plots and 30 community members. It's really pretty neat. A lot to be said for teamwork, and if just 2 or 3 people come together, like 5 or 10 people's work gets done of what one person could do by themselves. So you're just out here working with the dirt and asking people to come in and see what they think, getting a lot of different opinions, and you're just going, and by the end you get your initial water in, and you get your initial compost in, and the soil starts to look a little more livable, and then you get some seeds going, and you get your mounds, and you have your little, it's fun. It's a good time. You get some flags out, hopefully, so you know what came up where. These people right here have their grid system, so they'll have stuff coming up. They got a little lettuce. So, I mean, it's a new beginning every time, for sure. Just seeing people who you haven't seen for a few seasons getting back and meeting new faces, just kind of what keeps us human, I think.
So do you see like the connection between growing your own food and like having that on your dinner table as opposed to going out, and do you see like a benefit to like producing the food that you're consuming?
I think one of the strongest points I've ever heard like about this idea is when you get the standard 9-year-old, 8-year-old, 6-year-old American kid doesn't want much to do with vegetables unless they grow them themselves. Like once you get like school gardens going and people are like, oh, that's where broccoli comes from. Oh, I can eat it. That's so cool. I made it. So there's a lot of sense of even children, or especially children, they're better at everything, but they have a real sense of buy-in and a real sense of no. And so yes, I'm not going to say that it's not very nice and very great to go and sit at a restaurant and have some good organic, fancy person food. Like that's great, but I can't do that every day, and every day I can go home and have something on my plate that I trust, and something that I actually like enjoy eating. It's not like Sodexo put together but like for hundreds of people. It's something that I made for me, and it's just like I could do this, and I brought this all together, and it ties you into a bigger cycle of things than like, yes, you get tied into the economy in a different community when you go to a sit-down restaurant, but it's a local, sustainable, self-encompassing kind of thing that you're getting involved with when you start growing your own food and you start learning recipes that you can do with different things you wouldn't normally do. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, that is cool. I see that. All right, I think that just about answers all of my questions.
Stellar.
That was all great.
And then, yeah. Are you doing anything with the garden or just this project?
I'm just doing the project.
For
I'm
sure.
about to head home here soon. About to
Yeah.
go back to Michigan where I'm from.
Oh, nice. We're in Michigan.
I'm actually from Lansing.
Oh, for sure.
Would you mind?
Yeah, getting this stuff.
Great. My name's Lauren Shirley, and I live really close to DU campus, kind of at Asbury University. But I'm from Portland, Oregon, so I'm back and forth between the West Coast and here a lot. At the moment, I'm not as involved in the Bridge Garden as I have been in the past, but last year I had a plot, and me and Daniel Powell both ran it. So I'm kind of around, and I come to work days when I can, and like to be involved in the events and everything. My sophomore year at DU, I helped found the DU Garden Student Organization. So from then until this point, now that I've graduated, I've kind of just tried to be involved in both the Bridge Garden and the DU Permaculture Garden on campus. The Bridge Garden started a couple years before I got to DU, so I've been involved since I found out about the organization and everything, which was actually through Megan Kelly's writing class. My sophomore year, I took that intro class. And so I've been involved since the beginning of the DU Gardens student organization, but not since the beginning of the actual gardens. So I just was always really interested in any sort of like outdoorsy stuff, I guess, and I've really been sustainably minded and done a lot of research about every kind of sustainability you could possibly imagine. So I became really attracted to sustainable food production, and obviously the gardens kind of lend themselves to that interest. And also it's just a good way to meet people and to be involved in something that was really going on in the DU community. What's been really cool is that I've started to meet people that are in all different years at DU and worked with professors that I would have never met. I know, like I said, I worked with Dan Powell last year on our plot here in the Bridge Garden, and I consider him one of my good friends here at DU now. And I've got connections to faculty and neighborhood community and everything that I really wouldn't have kind of built had I not involved myself in this garden. It sounds cheesy, but it's kind of taught me a different kind of responsibility than I ever had before, because you really have to be involved all the time. You have to be here to water all summer and focus on the needs of the plants and everything. But it's taught me a lot about food, about where all of our sustenance comes from and how much effort and time and different products and everything kind of goes into that production. And it's sort of led me to want to pursue that as a career and work towards educating other people about food production and different ways of doing that. I just started talking to some people from Colorado Aquaponics, and they work with the Grow House in the Illyria-Swansea neighborhood in North Denver to provide a different kind of growing potentials for that organization. And I'm hoping to work with them in the future, and I'm working through an application for a program called Food Corps, which is an AmeriCorps program, and they do lots of different kinds of work in the fight against childhood obesity, implementing school gardens, running educational workshops, changing school lunch programs. So I'm kind of really hoping to go in that direction. Getting fresh produce from 3 blocks from your tiny little apartment is kind of a neat thing, and I was able to walk over here and pick whatever I wanted for a salad, and walk over here and see my friends watering their plots, and it gave me kind of a place that was peaceful and not covered in cement or brick or Kentucky bluegrass for the last couple years. And the DU's campus is great, but this is kind of a little oasis that's slightly separate that you can kind of run away to. The garden was really formed as a place where students were supposed to pair up with community members to work their plots, and that whole basic idea has kind of fallen by the wayside. But I think that the more people that hear about the gardens organizations and really get involved, the better those relationships will be. And I think that the idea of bringing students and neighborhood members together is a good thing, because oftentimes those relationships can be a little bit stressed because of just the nature of students on a big campus. I would say that it's a really good opportunity to be able to involve yourself in an organization on campus. It gives you the ability to go outside and do something that's productive and not just recreational, but it's really calming. You're able to produce something that wouldn't have been there, and is able to sustain people and get your hands dirty, and it's just kind of different than anything else that I've found at DU. On a general work day, I would say people kind of show up and start watering and weeding their own plots and doing whatever needs to be done for their space. But in the past, we had kind of a barbecue pit project that didn't really work out, so everybody pitched in to help with that and then to knock it down. And just making sure that the compost piles are going well, or painting and laying bricks in the right places. And there's a lot of little things to be done, and everybody kind of just pitches in wherever they can fit.
So you feel like everyone kind of helps out each other here?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I know I was gone for weeks at a time last summer, and all I had to do was stick a little piece of wood in the ground that said, "Please water my plot," and people would water it the whole time I was gone. Well, the name the Bridge Garden came from the initial idea that this was supposed to be a place where the neighboring communities to DU and the DU student body and campus could bridge together, form kind of a bridge to build relationships and that sort of thing. And I think that that's why it's right here, because there's houses around and it sort of feels like you're in the neighborhood, but you're also right next to these huge high-rise dorms. And I know until I joined the DU Gardens, I had no idea what this was, but I walked past it every day. And I think that the fact that it's kind of centrally located and a place that students see all the time was kind of the point, to try to get everyone to know what was going on. I would say that it's definitely done a better job for the people who have really pushed to involve themselves. I think that what needs to happen is a stronger student organization. It's better managed, and just people that are really seeking to have events and to get themselves out there. But for the students who have been involved, I'd say that it's been really beneficial.